how can Muslims in Europe and North America be colonized? Even, I would argue, white people can get colonized. And I'll talk a bit in further videos about how my own parents erased my identity. Because, it doesn't make sense really, how can people living in Europe and North America be colonized while Europe is the historical center of colonization? Well, many argue that although historically colonization was about the occupation of lands, now, in this day and age, it has just changed its shape. So empires are still there somehow, but they're just in a different form. They operate in a different way, with different strategies. Hello and welcome. My name is William. I am a researcher in sociology at the University of Warwick in the UK, and this is a video series about my newest book, Muslims in the Neoliberal Empire, which is about why and how the society colonizes us and what can we do about it. So we're here at the Shah Jahan Mosque in Woking, mosque many of you may remember for my video about Victorian Muslims. And I think this is interesting location because we found ourselves in a place which is a testimony of the imperial dynamics. Back then, empires were not a monolith. Of course, you've got people who feared the Orient or the other, people who would exploit the Orient, but also people fascinated by the Orient, like those behind the mosque. Well, actually, I'm now behind the mosque. I can show you there is literally no one apart from me. And we are filming during Ramadan, which is a month many would argue is about not only fasting from food and bodily needs, but also which is about fasting intellectually. Because, there's maybe no coincidence that what we see on our phones is called news feeds, or social media feeds. Maybe there's some kind of wisdom, detoxicating the body, but also doing a detox of the mind, being careful about what we ingest. So how does this modern colonization work? Let me give you an example. Try to name me one Muslim sportsperson or footballer, one Muslim businessman, one Muslim influencer, one Muslim politician. Easy enough, right? But now let's change this exercise and try to name me, in the 20th and 21st century, I'm being generous, one Muslim scientist, one Muslim doctor who invented some medicine, treatment or a vaccine against a serious illness, one Muslim charity worker who accomplished amazing works, or even a Muslim artist who won some of the biggest art prizes in the world recently. Tricky, right? So how come, although Islamic cultures have been a cradle for lots of important discoveries, one of the biggest scientists, the biggest philosophers, the biggest artists, the biggest humanitarians, how come we can't name some of these doctors, scientists, artists? Do you get my point? This is one of the many ways colonization works. Well, the title of the video is controversial on purpose. I don't believe this is the fault of the colonized. It's not the fault of those who were invaded, that they didn't have any guns while the invader had guns. I always believe that it is the responsibility lies on those who have the most power in this kind of dynamics. But now, even though people believe that Darwinism is a good thing, survival of the fittest, but back to modern days, I believe that things have changed, and now we are, not only me, but we are assessing dynamics where people who were historically oppressed can become oppressors, and people who were historically oppressors can become oppressed. Or put differently, now colonization has become a multi-way issue. There's so many trains, it's super noisy here, but when there's no trains it's quite peaceful and relaxing. This is also why I chose this environment. But back to the examples of footballers, businessmen, influencers, who told us that these people should be our role models. Why do so many young people go to fashion influencers for religious advice? Who told us that success in this life was about money, fame and power? No, it's like every time I open social media, it's screaming for women, yeah, empower yourself, become an OnlyFans model, and for men, yeah, go to the gym, take steroid injections. Who has decided this is the way to go? And I'm sure we can think about a few structures, whether it is the media, whether the politics, brands, and influencers, but let's shift the perspective for 1 second. Who got these influencers millions of followers in the first place? Who clicked or tap on, like, subscribe, follow? This is not to blame anyone in particular, but to illustrate that these dynamics are complex. It's a multi-way issue. There's not one single factor. There's not the fault on just one single individual or element of the society. Also, let's look at another paradox. Why is that Muslims in the UK and North America put so much emphasis on wealth, while these are the people who are one of the demographics that lacks financial stability? And especially when it comes to British Muslims, it's one of the demographics which are the most in debt. Now, it's almost ironic that people comment under wedding videos when people rent out these luxurious venues, sports cars. Oh, look, we are so rich. Well, I'm sorry, buddy, it's debt. Nothing belongs to you. It's just to the banks or the rental companies. It's money you don't have. And how many of us know these couples who get these big lavish weddings, and 1 or 2 years later they get divorced and they're still repaying the wedding expenses? So instead of spending £100,000 on a destination wedding, why not investing this into real estate? Instead of spending thousands on renting Lamborghinis, why not investing in a car rental company? And this is just about the financial aspect. We can look similarly at other elements of life, such as looks and appearances. Why there is such an emphasis on wearing designer clothes and undergoing plastic surgery? Why is that we see British Pakistani, British Bangladeshi Muslim influencers who open OnlyFans accounts? So if, like me, you consider Islam not as an identity label, not as a fashion statement, but as a framework for life, you may ask yourselves, how come people sell their religion, their identity, their ethics, their morals, their bodies for the sake of money, fame and power? What's happening there? Some people may argue, oh, this is South Asian culture. No, I'm sorry, this is not South Asian culture. I think if people were sticking to their ancestral culture, we won't see that happening. So what if the decisions we make, the choices we make, the things we like, were not exactly ours? Sounds scary, right? What if somebody or something was telling us how to look, how to speak, how to behave, to the point where we can compromise our very core, our identity, our morals, our ethics, what makes us human in a way? Do you see where I'm going? It's like Islam has been replaced by a strange religion. Or to be more accurate, it's like the practice, the modern practice of Islam in Europe and America has been replaced by a strange religion. But what has then replaced Islam? There's a cat around the mosque. That's lovely. Look, he's very curious. He's interested in my camera bag now. Now there's no food in it. Wow. Billy, Ajo. Billy. People say, oh, they're just having fun. It's nothing that serious. But hey, I argue, no, this is not having fun. People are looking for comfort. This is very, very different. If someone was looking from the outside at Muslims in Europe and America, they would think, these are a bunch of traumatized kids who are getting high on sugar to forget their problems. And this fun, as people say, has real life consequences. I mean, How many people I've seen with like their house getting repossessed, marriage breaking down, the kids suffer the consequences of it. How many times I've seen people getting addicted on drugs, people, it's crazy. Can you figure out that you have now Muslims who end up homeless, elderly Muslims ending up in care homes and dying alone, and this was unthinkable just a few years ago. Not only people are getting plastic surgery, but we start looking down on people who don't conform to the norm, people who have too dark skin, who are too fat, who just don't tick the right boxes. I hear people say, oh, we need a Muslim Mark Zuckerberg, we need a Muslim Elon Musk, we need a Muslim Rupert Murdoch. Like, do you realize that these are secular men who worship power, money and fame, and who for many of them just don't like Muslims? Why is it not possible for people to say things such as, oh, we need a British Malcolm X, we need an American Al-Ghazali, we need a European Rabia Al-Adawiya? It's almost as if we've ended up hating ourselves. We've been trying to erase anything that makes us look or sound different. Let me tell you how my own parents raised my identity. So my parents were born in Poland and they moved to France in the 80s. They were fleeing communism. They met and got married in France. What they did is that they completely erased my Polish identity. Instead of giving me a Polish name, they gave me an English name, saying that, oh, wherever you go in the world, people will be able to pronounce your name. It's not the case. And they refused to teach me Polish. I had to learn Polish by myself later in life. Even when it comes to religion, my parents are Christian, but because it's an identity label. They told me the stories of the prophets, but they never taught me the values of Christianity, that it's about helping the poor and the vulnerable, it is about justice, it's about standing and speaking truth to power and these kind of things. No. For them it was just part of the Polish identity, and now studies, money were more important than that. But why did they erase this part of my identity? I don't have access to my family in Poland anymore because we just can't communicate. So every election in France, they would tell me and my sister, they were scared of the French far right, the Front National, the National Front at the time, saying that if they come to power, they will send us back home. And later in life, when I asked my mom why he didn't teach me Polish, and this is something she regrets. She tells me that they wanted us, me and my sister, to blend in. They didn't want kids to pick up on our accent at school if we had any accent, and it wouldn't have happened. They wanted us to become more French than the French, for French meritocracy to work. There's no such thing as meritocracy in Europe. This is a form of colonization because of social and political pressures. But you know what? Malcolm X saw it coming. So this is a thing that Malcolm X described in the last chapter of his autobiography as aspirational whiteness, and Franz Fanon described as wearing white masks. So, okay, my parents were white, but if you go to Western Europe, you know that if you come from the East, you're not the right kind of white. So I argue, it should be maybe more accurately described as a Western European neoliberal type of whiteness in a way. It's when people reject what makes them different from these parameters, this white, modern, neoliberal way of being. And so my parents reject Polishness, and they aspire at, reading French literature only. You dispose of your heritage, what makes you yourself, and even your morals, your ethics, your religion, your faith, and you aspire at becoming like those in power for various reasons, and we'll go through this in future videos. But you know what? One experience in my life which was very ironic is when I tried to fit in with British Muslims. I embraced Islam in France back in 2008. and I came to the UK in 2013, and I thought, it was, to be accepted, you just need to be a good person, a good Muslim, you need to pray, you need to fast. When I was looking at the men who were given jobs in the Muslim charity sector, when I was looking at the men who were marrying the women I was talking to for marriage, it was ironic that they would hire and marry the Muslim men who would not pray, who would not care about religion, who would be clean-shaved or, laser trimmed, and who would, all be about designer clothes, German saloons. They wouldn't even have the skills for the job or, the skills to be a good husband, but still they would go for these kind of people. Well, of course, spoiler alert, it didn't end very, very well for these charities and these marriages, but hey. And I was very naive and thinking that when you talk to someone, to a Muslim, you should state clearly that your intentions are marriage. But no, all these men and these women as well, it's all about dating. And this is, one of my first shocks as a Muslim in the UK. Muslims date. They just go one-night stands and no, they don't want to get married. Of course, not everyone is the same, but that was my experience back then. Back to this aspirational whiteness, or wearing white masks. This is something for example, you see in Parliament. You've probably noticed that they happen to be more anti-Muslim, more Islamophobic, more anti-immigration than some people on the far right. Isn't that crazy? So this is when this pressure to conform that my parents have experienced is becoming internalized. So people embrace the dominant values, the dominant norms. They start to think like the dominators, Sajid Javid, or the chair of Reform UK, the anti-immigration party, Zia Yusuf. Like he proudly identifies as a Muslim, but he's more anti-immigration than anyone I know. But there's more to that, people don't just do it out of fear, like my parents did. There is a myth, a narrative behind that, something I call a theology of liberation. It is a narrative that has its roots in the 1940s, 1950s, but was popularized by people like Thatcher in the UK and Reagan in the US. This is something called neoliberalism. So it's an economic system that became a way of life. And this narrative was that you can escape your condition, you can escape the barriers of poverty, racism, if you become rich, famous or powerful. You can break from your social and economic cage if you work hard enough. And again, I put the emphasis, it's a myth. It's a mythology. It's not something that is actually true, because if people could be happy by working hard enough and earning money by working hard enough, I think the world would be a different place. But this is the narrative, and to achieve this goal, it's perfectly fine to sacrifice your ethics, your beliefs, your morals, your values, your identity, your faith. It's a culture of competition. We are competing against each other. There's no collectivity anymore. There's no use of solidarity. It's every man for themselves, every person for themselves. And yeah, it's the end justify the means. But you may say, how people could have bought this lie, that how people can have fallen into this trap. Really, it seems so obvious. Why did all this happen? Let's look at history. Think about how for generations people have been subjects, not actors, but subjects, literally subjects of the empire. They didn't have any agency, any control on their own lives. And for generations, imagine, we have people who have been deprived from financial stability, media visibility, political representation. And what does it do in the end? When you keep people under your boot for so many centuries, literally, people lose their confidence. People grow an inferiority complex. The empire has been digging the graves of people without giving them the tools to climb back up. And think how for generations people have been kept under control the occupation of land, colonization, the slave trade, indenture, partition, migration, and now racism, Islamophobia, neoliberalism. And then you tell them, well, look, you can escape your condition if you work hard enough, if you become rich, famous, or powerful, if you climb the social and economic ladder. And of course, in the process, if you get rid of anything that makes you, different, again, identity, culture, religion, tradition, morals, ethics, values, everything, what makes you who you are, who you were. And this, my friends, is how you colonize people. You deprive them, you bring them to a breaking point where they will be forced to accept anything you throw at them. You deprive them, you trap them, and you lead them where you want them to go. And this is how the empire orchestrates the death of cultural and moral standards. We don't know a thing about financial literacy. We don't know anything about career strategy. We don't know how to recover from bad parenting. We model our married life and our parenting on the dysfunctional married life and bad parenting of our own parents. Because we don't know better. We don't know where to find the information and the tools to be better and break the cycle. We find our prophets on social media and celebrate whatever works in the mainstream and just throw halal Muslim Islamic labels to it because, if it works for them, why not for us? We see the far right rising to power. Then people rush at finding parallels between Islamic history and the far right to show them, we can be friends, we align, we have the same values. We see the red pill movement and everyone starts offering red pill Islamic courses, alpha male Muslimic courses. We listen to trash people like Jordan Peterson, and until, they realize, he was against us all this time, and no one saw it coming. We see Christian missionaries going to Africa, taking selfies with orphans without asking their permission, without creating any people, just to add lines on their CVs or just do some PR job on social media. So we start doing the same. We copy everything. Halal wine, halal champagne, halal interest, halal mortgages, halal ham, halal dating, halal pornography, halal gambling. We don't have any initiatives on our own. But in my 15 years of research work, I've been trying to understand where does it come from? Because of course, the people who do these kind of things have a part of responsibility, but do they have a choice? For example, do you have a choice in accepting or refusing counter-extremism money when your madrasa in the Midlands is offered £50,000 a year? Can you just, refuse the £50,000 the government is giving you to spy on your own people? Imagine you're a single mom, you're on benefits, and because of your social media, Nike offers you £3,000 after tax to become a Nike ambassador. Can you refuse that even if it entails promoting products which are made by Muslim forced labor in China? So you basically will have blood on your hands, but in your situation, can you just refuse if Nike offers you £3,000 a month after tax? Because I've met people who are influencers, who are in this kind of industry. Okay, they're perpetrators, they are colonial agents, but they're also victim of some wider dynamics. And this is how people start to believe that there is no hope, because, again, colonial subjects are not given a choice. As Margaret Thatcher famously said, there is no alternative. And this is Neoliberalism 101, or the ABC of neoliberalism if you're British, or the BABA of neoliberalism if you're French. It has put people in survival mode. The society doesn't give us the time to just stop, sit, and reflect. What am I doing? What can I do? Can I do even things differently? No, because we are in survival mode. 9 to 5, we need to pay the bills, we need to pay the rent, we need to take care of the kids, we have to somehow cope with our own mental health and perhaps dysfunctional marriage, because we are not given the tools anywhere. No, it's not our parents, it's not schools, it's not uni, it's not the workplace that will give us the tools, how to become like financially literate, how to build a healthy and sustainable marriage, how to be good parents. Like, who gives us the tools? Okay, you may argue maybe on the internet, but then, like, how do you take the time to find the right information on the internet? This society harms us and doesn't give us the time and the tools to heal. It's not 20 or 25 days of annual leave that will help us recover from all of this all of a sudden. So here's the answer. These are the things we need to decolonize ourselves from. We need to basically break our chains, but these chains are not physical, they are psychological, they are cultural, social, economic, they are political. There's so many of them, and most of them we can't see or touch with our own hands, and this is what makes things difficult. What can we do about it? And especially when not only the whole of the society or the structures of power, but everyone around us, even our own families, tell us the same thing: you need to obey and conform. Do you know how disappointed my parents were when I gave up a career in engineering to do sociology? Yeah, this is how you colonize your own people. And this is why, even white working class people in England are colonial subjects too. These are people in a very, very similar situation. And the government, what it does, and other, agitators, they try to divide us, thinking that no, because we have a different skin color, we are different people. Or because you have a different passport, you're different people. No, everyone is in the same prison. Everyone falls for the same traps, because the aim of any political structure is not to care about the people, it's to control the population. It is to control the society, to monitor it. You are managing a bunch of people. Whoever says power implies control. You cannot have power if you cannot control something in the first place. We know what's wrong in the society. We know what's harming people. There is plenty of books, plenty of research demonstrating all of this. But what are the solutions? What can we do about it? What are the next steps? What can we practically do at our individual level, or as poor citizens, poor subjects of the empire, to, first of all, resist all these pressures and these dynamics, and then how can we start healing from these wounds and these traumas, and eventually how can we flourish, build lives where we are actually happy, but not only happy, but free and independent from these structures of power. When we have agency, finally, we stop being subjects and we start being actors of our lives. And these are the questions I'll be answering in not only the book, but in the future videos of this series. And spoiler alert, this is not an easy work. This is not going to be easy. This is not going to be quick. It's going to be hard work. It's going to take time. And I'll be sharing with you stories of the people who actually made it. And it's all, it's very, very long term. But how to, cope and resist in that long, like we're talking about dozens of years sometimes. But it's possible. People have done it. It works. And there is hope. And this is the message I want to leave you with for now. To hear more about this book journey, you can subscribe to the newsletter, where I'll be advertising online live events where we can have interactive discussions around all these topics. And I'll be also advertising in-person events in the UK, in Europe, in the US. So I hope this video was useful. Thank you very much for watching. Take care of yourselves and each other.